everyone. My name is Walter, and I'm a person of long time recovery. And I just wanted to introduce myself to you and give you a little bit of my recovery journey and how it was for me, how it is today. And hopefully, I'll be able to help out someone throughout this whole process. I'm originally from the Philadelphia area. I moved to Northeast Pennsylvania a little over 16 years ago, seeking recovery. Um, my journey is like anybody else's journey. I used to live and I lived to use, and my life got unmanageable, and then it got uncontrollable. And what I did was the only thing that I knew how to do is I sought help. And when I say I sought help, I knew that I couldn't do it by myself. So I went into a long-term treatment program here in Northeast Pennsylvania as I relocated from the bigger city, so to speak. And I started my process of recovery. And when I say I started my process of recovery, that meant that I had to surrender at a very early age. And once I did that, I saw that my life could get better because other people who were in the process were giving me their experience and told me that their life had gotten better if I followed certain suggestions that were given to me at that time. So what I did was I bought into the program very early on. I bought into the program. I got involved in the program. I am a member of a 12-step program. That 12-step program basically saved my life. And what I mean by that is that I joined a home group. I got a sponsor. These were some things that were suggested of me. I got a sponsor. I let that sponsor sponsor me. Um, I got a support network of men who showed me how to live. When I got here, I had no direction on how to become a man. I was 38 years old at the time, and I had no idea of what it took for me to become a man. So what I did was I let some men who had already been through this process show me how to live. And they guided me through this whole process. One of them became my sponsor. Other members became members of my support network. And they instilled in me very early some morals and some values, and along with some tools. And I was able to utilize those tools to help me in this process because the one thing I knew is that I didn't want to go back to the life that I was living. And the life that I was living was very traumatic. Um, Living on the streets in a big city and I suffered from the disease of addiction. And the only way to supply that habit was for me to do things out of my character, things that I was not brought up to do. Um, so I turned to a life of crime to support my habit. Um, and by turning to that life of crime to support my habit, um, I ended up getting in trouble within the judicial system, and I suffered dearly for a lot of years. And active addiction actually lasted 27 years. So you can imagine the trauma and the turmoil that I went through throughout that time. Um, I was incarcerated quite a few times. I had about 13, 14 different stints in inpatient rehabilitation centers. Um, and I just couldn't seem to get it together. You know, I kept on returning back to the I was living prior to going in to those treatment facilities and incarcerations. And every time I got the same result because nothing changed. And when nothing changes, nothing changes. And I resorted back to the lifestyle that I was living. Um, Finally, I was so beat down throughout my life that, like I said, I went into my last treatment facility. It was a long-term facility. I ended up relocating. So relocation was a part for me that I had to do. I left the area that I was from and I moved to Northeast Pennsylvania. I went into that long-term facility and they started to teach me some morals and some values, the same morals and values that I was taught as a child growing up. To have respect for myself, to have respect for elders, to become responsible, to become the man that I knew I always could become. Um, so I did that, and I bought into the program. And if you told me to jump, I said, how high would you like for me to jump? And I followed some simple suggestions. I followed some simple suggestions, and I took those suggestions and I took those tools and I implemented those tools in my life. Um, and I'm not going to sit here and tell you that it was all, a bed of roses, because it wasn't. It was a lot of ups and downs. Um, my first couple of years in this process, I struggled. I did. I struggled, and because I wanted to be hard headed and I wanted to do things my way. And once I realized that my way wasn't working, what I did was I finally bought into the process, and I let some men help me in my life. I got that sponsor that everyone was telling me to get. I got a support network, and I started to utilize those tools. And I started to see that I wasn't in pain as much as I was in the beginning, because I had stopped fighting. And a lot of people say that surrender is not a form of giving up. But for me, it was a form of me just wanting to throw my hands up in the air and let some people guide me in my life. And I did that. And I tell you, I saw I saw early dividends within like the first 6 months. And and I started to like that. You know, I started to like the fact that I was waking up each day, and I was praying to a higher power. I started off very early on. I'm an early riser, and I started to wake up early morning and go into prayer meditation, and that helped me start my day. And then the next thing I would do, I would read literature. I read self-help literature, which helped me tremendously. Um, and then I would call another person in recovery. Um, After that, my life was really simple. I would make a 12-step meeting, and then I would I started to fellowship. I didn't. I arrived there early. I stayed late. You know, I let people know where exactly I was within my recovery that day, whether it was good, bad, or indifferent. I let people know, and very early on, by me becoming open and honest with them, my life started to get better. And then before you know it, I started to put some time together, and I wasn't running back to the same thing that I always did. I wasn't. I started to change my behaviors, and when I started to change my behaviors, my attitude started to change. And when I started to change my attitude, my life started to get better. And I don't know if you can like follow me in that, but that's the whole process of recovery, just making that change. And I wanted to change so badly, right, that I was willing to do any and everything. And if you told me to go stand in the middle of the street and yell out that I needed help, then that's something that I was willing to do. And I don't know. What I do know is that things started to get better for me. I got involved. I uh, I started to get involved in the service work of this program, and I started doing for others to get outside of me. And what that did for me was it made me not focus on, minute by minute, hour by hour, staying clean in this process, and me starting to grow. And what I did was, as I started to grow, you know, um, it was suggested that I start to help other people. And when I started to help other people, man, I tell you, that's when that freedom came to me. And what I say by freedom, that's something that I've always been looking for. Just because I got outside of myself and I started helping other people, I started to get better. You know, then eventually, as most of us do, I found someone that I thought that I wanted to share the rest of my life with, and that young lady, we ended up dating, early on. I think I had about 9, 10 months clean, and in this process, and I was being sponsored. I was involved in service. I had service commitments. I was giving back what was so freely given to me. And then our life started to get better in that process. And I saw myself continuing to grow. And then it was suggested of me to start giving back what was so freely given to me. So I started helping other people, and I started taking people through, you know, the same process that I was taken through. And I thought other people's life started to get better as a result of me giving back to them, and my life was getting better. It continued to get better. And like I said in the beginning, it wasn't all a bed of roses, but life started to show up at that point in time. And my relationship, my now wife, at that time she was my wife, ended up having a child. We ended up losing that child, and I experienced my first traumatic experience in recovery. Um, but I knew that as long as I utilized the tools that was there for me, that I can get through that process without having to pick up a chemical or a mind-altering substance. And I didn't have to go back to the lifestyle or the behaviors that I was accustomed to living in. And and I started putting together some time, man. And when I started putting together some time, I was like, wow, that gave me so much courage and so much inspiration that no matter what came down the pike, like I can get through any and every situation, you know. And I guess that's my message today, is that I can get through any and every situation, no matter what it is, how big or how little. And you know what? I don't have to use over it. I don't have to resort back to that person that I was in active addiction. I don't have to resort back to that lying, manipulating person. I can talk about it. I can go to one of my support meetings, and I can raise my hand, and I can let people know exactly where I'm at. Um, and I can get through those situations. You know, as I continued on in this process, I knew that I needed to do more. Um, the process of recovery, although it was help and change my life, what it also did for me was it made me become a responsible individual. It made me become an employable individual. Excuse me. It made me become an employable individual. And because of the wreckage of my past, I always knew that I wanted to work in a field where I can help people, and I wanted to work in a field where as though I would be able to show the empathy that was instilled in me, by being there for other people who suffer from the disease of addiction, just like I did. And but also have to take a step back and go back, that when I was in active addiction, when I was living the lifestyle that I was living, that I wasn't a responsible individual, and I wasn't responsible enough to maintain and hold the job, no kind of employment um, throughout my active addiction life. But once I started to implement some tools and let some people show me how to live, I became a more responsible person, and I became employable. And I started to see that I didn't have to, you know, start a job and get paid and then go off to the races and go back to active addiction. That because I had some morals and I had some responsibilities in my life, it made me want to be that person that wanted to stay the course, and I ended up the first job I had in recovery, I ended up staying there for over 7.5 years. And the only reason why I left that job was because of another job opportunity that came along the line that seemed to be a better opportunity for me. And I need to tell you, that was the first time in my life that I had actually sat down and wrote a letter of resignation, um, and left a job the responsible way. And the day that I left that job, they actually had a party for me. They had a cake for me. And I tell you, that was something that I've never experienced a day in my life. I was always asked to leave my place of employment, or I was escorted out by the security at that job. And that feeling that came upon me my last day of employment at this job, man, was overwhelming. You know, they I had no knowledge that they were going to have a little get together at the end of my shift, and they called me down over the loudspeaker and asked me to report to the cafeteria. And I, it was unbelievable. It was probably 100 of my co-workers and former co-workers that had came back that heard that that day was my last day of employment there, and they honored me. And I tell you, I broke down because I had never experienced that type of love and admiration and respect, um, from an employer, and the, the feeling that I felt that day, I never wanted that to last. I never wanted it to end. And that actually instilled in me a sense of belonging. You know, not saying that I had arrived, but stating that I was now being acknowledged for the hard work that I was putting in. And I ended up walking out of there, you know, turning in my keys that day, because at that time I was able to become responsible enough to have a set of keys to a facility, and being able to turn those keys in as a responsible adult, as a responsible employee, and walking out of there with my head held high and going on to my next journey in life, because that's exactly what it was. It was a journey in life. I was able to advance in my career. I was being acknowledged for that, and people were starting to take recognition that I did have something to offer, and I ended up going into a field, although it was the helping field. I went into a field that years prior to me going into this field, I was actually supervised by this particular agency, and had no idea that years later, by me just following this simple program, instilling some tools within my life, instilling some morals in my life, instilling some responsibility in my life, that I actually ended up working for the same facility that used to monitor me and supervise me for a lot of years of my life in active addiction, and that was beyond my wildest dream. And what that did for me was it showed me that, what, I do have something to offer. And today I still have that job. Today I still, show up on a regular basis, and I still help people who are struggling, and suffering from the disease of addiction. So if I'm able to help anyone with anything that I have said, you know, just know this, that change is possible. Change is much needed. Um, if I didn't change my life, when I first got here, that none of this would be possible. Today, I'm living beyond my wildest dreams. I'm starting to set goals for myself, and if I could do that, anybody listening to me can do that. Recovery is possible. A new way of life is possible. And I want to say, listen, thank you for listening to me. I hope I was able to help someone along this process. and know that you can do it as well. Thank you for allowing me to share my experience, my strength, and my hope with you. My name is Walter. I'm a person in long time recovery, and I appreciate you for listening. Thank you.